What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex. In this video, I want to give you guys my early impressions on Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. I played it as much as I could yesterday, and I'm going to be continuing over the next couple days, and we'll give you guys a full review as the days go, but I'm loving it. I think this game is really, really awesome, so very early quick impressions. This game really is kind of the game of my dreams. There's a few things I think holding it back from being like the greatest thing of all time, or being maybe like the perfect version of itself, right? I mean, no game is ever perfect. I've said that actually many times on the channel, but for what it's trying to do and what it's trying to like recapture, it does it almost flawlessly, right? Again, there's a few things here and there, but one thing I just want to kind of start out with is like seeing that opening and jumping in and starting basically the fight of Goku and Vegeta and just learning the ropes, or having kind of like a training session. And then you could do training, you could do the story mode, you can do many different modes that are in this game that we'll talk about. It's just surreal to be back. I haven't played Dragon Ball in a very long time, even like the newer ones. Now, I did go back to replay the Budokai series, kind of where it all began, at least in my mind. And, this is what I thought that was, right? Like the explosions and just like how incredible it looks. I mean, you could talk about it from like a visual level, but like pulling off the moves, like when you do just a simple Kamehameha, right? Just how freaking good it looks, and the colors, and just how vibrant and like glowing it all is unbelievable. It's unreal that we're actually at this point. I really don't think we've gotten anything that can look, and also in that way, because it looks so good, can capture Dragon Ball the way that this game does. Now, does it do it flawlessly? No. There's actually many moments I found myself in where, certain characters would almost get stuck. You'd be up against like a wall, and while some things are destructible in this game, others aren't, right? So sometimes there'd almost be like clipping with the camera, and the camera angle wouldn't be good. I like that the camera angle like weaves and bobbles with you, and it's kind of like in a weird like viewpoint, and you can customize that stuff, by the way, too. But I like it. I mean, I like that it very much like follows the flow of combat, and you're moving so freaking fast, right? When you're doing these dashes, you're appearing behind the enemy, and you're doing kind of these chain attacks. Like, it is fast, and it's just a lot that's going on at one time that the camera has to process. So I think overall it does an incredible job of like keeping everything in front of you and keeping things moving and making it feel dynamic, not just in the gameplay, because of course you're doing these combos and you're pulling off these moves, but the camera also, the camera is very important for a game like this, right? So for the camera to kind of keep that same theme of dynamicness, if that's even a word, right? Like being just constantly moving, it overwhelmingly does a good job. It does clip, here and there. And that is one, I would say, like the bigger problems that this game has. I would say the camera work at times can be one of the biggest issues. The other one I would say is kind of the story mode. Now it's kind of like a catch-22. I'm really liking it in a lot of ways, and then in some ways it's like, and maybe it's because I just replayed these Budokai games right now. I didn't even replay, now I did like when I was a kid, but I didn't even replay like the Tenkaichis or really any of like the Kakarats of the world as we got closer. I didn't replay any of those, but I can tell you from like the Budokai games, I don't know, like maybe that was a bad idea. So I guess what I'm trying to express here is like the story is serviceable, and it did what we thought it was going to do, right? But at times you wish it kind of would have done more. I think for me to like really try to nail it down, it's how they jump from like the different ways of doing the storytelling. So there's more like cinematic scenes that the cut scenes, right? There's a few of those that are in the stories. Then there's more of like the comic panels, right? Where it'll be a little dynamic, like it'll kind of fold over the screen, and it'll have the dialogue at the bottom, and you kind of like click through it, right? And sometimes it'll have talking, sometimes it won't have talking. And I just feel, I think this has happened before. I feel like Budokai 2 maybe did this, or maybe it was 3, but I remember one of them did very similar things to this, where it's like, it just doesn't feel like a string is attached through it. It feels very disjointed, where it's jumping from one way of storytelling from like a cutscene to then kind of, not necessarily like lazy, because I think it always is looking good. Like when it's almost like comic panels and it's kind of stagnant, it still looks good, but it's like, all right, I don't know, like I would have kind of liked more. And then the way that they kind of skip over things, now that is just common, right? Like they do that all the time, but they sometimes skip over like weird things that I feel like some of the Budokai games didn't skip over. It's actually almost a reverse. This game, I feel like, has dialogue and has a few scenes in some of these arcs that the older games didn't have, but then the vice versa is also true. Like those games had stuff that this game doesn't have. Like this game took some stuff out, or it put on the reserve list, and now it's just like a panel screen that you see it on. So I don't know. I don't know if they've ever been able to nail it like completely. I think Budokai 1, when they actually had like the cutscenes, I think that was the most freaking in-depth of at least the first 3 Budokai games, and probably this one. That was probably the most in-depth story that we've ever gotten, from these Dragon Ball games. So that would really be the other one. Now, again, that's not to say it's bad. They're meaty. Like there's a lot of fights. There is story. They're doing more than those Budokai games, especially early on. Like they very much focused on Goku. Then they kind of expanded to you could play a couple other characters and kind of fill in the rest of those arcs and those stories. I mean, this game has quite a good list. Goku Black, Frieza, right? Like it's got a good amount of content, and that's the game's strength. I really think, on the other side, well, the combat, like the actual gameplay is freaking phenomenal, so that's a big strength. And then just the amount of things to do is unreal. There are, I feel like this is a game that you'll be playing for an incredibly long time before the DLC even gets there, right? Because there's just so many characters that are all unique, and you're going to have to kind of grind to get some of them. Like I said, the story mode is actually pretty, like I'm not disappointed by the length of the story mode or the amount of things that are there. But for me, it really comes down, I tweeted this actually yesterday. For me, it comes down to a lot of like the fan creations. I think that custom battle is probably one of the coolest things that has ever been thought up, or at least maybe in like the Dragon Ball sphere or the anime sphere, because you can basically make mini episodes, and there are so many of them already out. And I tried to filter by like the most played or the most upvoted, and I mean some of the most popular ones are legitimate like mini episodes, right? Like they've got freaking arcs, they've got characters doing their evolutions, and then they'll swap out with somebody else, or like I think there was a Broly one where he's just so freaking powerful that you have to fuse and you kind of have to continue the evolutions, and it's unreal, and it just, I don't know, just adds something else to do. You're playing as characters that maybe you're not going to play in the story mode. It gives you a chance to play as characters maybe you wouldn't pick it in a world tournament or like an online battle, and it's just throwing scenarios at you. And I mean, basically they have their own too, right? They have the bonus battles, which I think are also pretty cool, but I don't know, that's another one where I think they're cool, but then you do the custom battles, which is where like the people make their scenarios, and they're actually, I feel like, better and more in depth, which kind of makes the bonus battles a little bit weaker. But that, to me, that's this game's biggest strength, is actually the sole amount of content. Now, it's not just like quantity over quality. Again, the entire game is based off the fighting, and I think the fighting is unreal. Like it's harder than again, I just came off of replaying 1, 2, and 3 over the last maybe like 6 months. Like those were the 3 games I played, and those games, over time progressed in, and they added things, right? Like it basically got a little bit more challenging. You just had more things going on with dodging that they introduced kind of in Budokai 3, right? Like they just kept adding, and the game still felt simplistic compared to like, the Tekkens and Street Fighters of the world, but like it had more to it. And this game feels like that proper evolution of the Budokai games, the Tenkaichi games, and so on. Like it's not the most impossible game to get a hold of. Like characters are gonna function relatively the same way, right? Like combos are combos, and kind of timing attacks and timing dodges and timing kind of like when you're going to appear on the other side of them, right? Those are the big things in this game. And I can respect that because it's more chaotic because of the visuals and just the amount of times the camera is freaking switching and you're going ultimate, or you're throwing your special kind of moves right at the other person. Like it gets crazy, but it's still actually in its soul, I think it's quite simplistic, which I give so much respect to, because it doesn't have to be, and I have total respect for Tekken and Mortal Kombat and all of those, but for these games, that's just not what it is. That's not the whole point of it, right? So I mean, the combat, I know I'm talking about kind of a lot of the features of this game, but when it comes down to it, the combat is what you're going to be doing so much, and I think they do a phenomenal job at it. But yeah, there's just so much to do in this game. The what if scenarios, I think, is actually an incredibly cool part to the story mode, which adds a little replayability there. The game is just so big. I'm having a blast. I really am. Like, it's, again, again, besides some of the wonky camera work at times, and then the story mode just kind of being like too jumpy, it's kind of like too ADHD. Besides those, the game is insanely good. Like, this is the game that I wanted. This is the game I think fans have wanted. I think like the custom battles and stuff is going to keep this game around a very long time, even if they didn't add DLC, and they are going to do that, right? So I think this game has a great path ahead of itself, and I think it's going to sell very, very, very well. So there's my thoughts, at least right now. Again, I'll play it a little bit more over the next couple days, actually a lot more, and then I'll probably do a full review during the week. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.